This is social studies, and this week we're going to be talking about Utah's tart cherry industry, and it's a way of kind of talking about producers, consumers, supply and demand, and putting those things all together with a real industry. So you should be able to write about those terms that we've talked about: supply, demand, scarcity, and surplus, and we're going to learn a little bit about the tart cherry industry and see how that applies. Those words apply to this particular industry. So you're going to build, first of all, we're building background connections. So tart cherries are a cherry that are produced in several states. 75% of the tart cherries are produced in Michigan, but Utah is second in the nation for tart cherry production. And then Washington State is the third. So tart cherries are usually used for pies and other baked goods. They're not, sweet cherries are the ones that you would eat fresh, that you would find maybe in the produce section at your grocery store. So on this page, there's a story. So go ahead and listen to that read aloud. Some of you may have read that book before. It's actually a fun book about all that goes into making a cherry pie. And then we're just going to, these next few slides, review what we have talked about already. If you can't remember, what are producers, what are consumers, and what does scarcity mean? This is a really good slide that's going to review those for you. So go ahead and read what it says. Remembering that producers are those that make the things that we use or grow the things. Consumers are the people who use those products or those goods or those services. And scarcity means that something is really hard to find. There's a really low supply of it. Remember, we talked about supply and demand, and supply has something to do with how much of something there is, and demand has to do with how much a person or a group wants something. So on this slide, there is a video. You're going to want to pay close attention to this video because you're going to be using this video on the next few slides to show that you paid attention and to show what you've learned. On this slide, you are going to watch the video and then you're going to put the pictures in order. And so you will just, if you look at picture one, so the first picture, which picture happened first, and then you're going to type it here in this box. So you would look at all of the pictures over here on the right and you would decide, well, which one of those was something that happened first, and then you would type your answer in. And you'll continue to do that through all 10 pictures. And they all have something to do with the video before that you just, sorry, I skipped a page. On this page, which is an assignment for a little bit higher, you could get a slightly better grade on this page, is that you're going to look at the pictures on this slide. They are the same as the pictures we just looked at. And then you're going to match the letter on the picture with the description back to the previous slide, and you would choose, gosh, which one of those pictures looks like cherries are being delivered? And then you would take on the next slide. So here, you're going to look at the pictures. You might have to go back and forth between the two slides, but you're going to look at, it describes the cherries are delivered to a processing plant. So you would go and you would type that number or that letter in the box underneath the description. So truthfully, I thought this was maybe a little bit easier than the other one. And then the final assignment that you can do, which I think is a really great way to see if you understand what you've been learning, is to read these problems and write your responses. So you would create a scenario in which there would be a tart cherry scarcity in the United States. So what that means is you need to think, well, what would make it so that we have a scarcity of tart cherries? What are some of the things that could happen so that would make that happen? And then you would type there what that would be. The second one is to predict what would happen with a high supply of tart cherries. So say we have tons and tons of tart cherries, way more than we need, what would happen? So you would predict what could happen with that, and you type it there. And then the last slide, predict what would happen if there was a low demand for tart cherries. So what if all of a sudden people decided they didn't like tart cherries anymore, or people they had enough, so they didn't need any more? Well, what would happen if there was a low demand? What would happen to that industry? So think about that. Would they keep growing them? What would happen to prices? Think about those things as you're looking at these problems here. And then the last thing that you're going to do as we're making connections is just to talk about industries like the cherry industry rely on producers and consumers working together in order to be successful. So what other industries can you think of that rely on producers and consumers working together? And these are just for you to think about. These are just thought questions. And then the second one, think about all the technology you saw in the video and pictures, and how does technology help the tart cherry industry? I thought that was really interesting, watching all the ways technology plays a part. So think about that. And I hope you enjoy this assignment. It's kind of fun to put all those things together and make those connections.